Ladies and gentlemen, we hope that you have all enjoyed your morning coffees and are ready to start our conference with us here today. And as we begin, we would first like to acknowledge and extend a very warm welcome to Munira Khairudin, CEO, Principal Asset Management, Berhad; Juan Izagirre, Chief Executive Officer, ASEAN Principal Asset Management, Berhad; distinguished guests, members of the media, and ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning once again, and on behalf of Principal Asset Management, I would like to thank each and every one of you for being with us here today for Principal's 5th Annual Private Retirement Scheme PRS Conference, #Live After Work 2019. And through the course of the day, we will be engaging and conversing with one another on insightful sharing sessions of PRS with our subject matter experts and retirement learnings from around the world. And indeed, Principal has been bringing their global expertise and capabilities here into the market to better collaborate with investors, institutions, and customers in ensuring a better financial outcome. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we would first like to share with you a quick fact that according to the National Strategy for Financial Literacy, 41% of Malaysians rely on their EPF savings as the main source of income for retirement. And there have been multiple reports stating that our funds in EPF alone will not be enough to sustain our retirement. So just a thought for us to keep in mind throughout the rest of the day. And before we proceed with our formalities, ladies and gentlemen, we do have some housekeeping announcements for you. As you look upon your tables, you'll see a black leaflet of which has instructions and a guided step for you to download our Principal mobile application, which you will then be able to access the speakers' profiles, topic overviews, as well as insert any questions that you may have later on during our panel discussion. And on top of that, as we are always there for our customers, they in turn are also here for us, which I'm sure you've all noticed that outside in the foyer we have a Starbucks coffee pop-up booth, so you'll be able to retrieve a complimentary coffee and frappuccino during our breaks. And we also have a KPJ Specialist Hospital booth where you can get a free health screening, so you can get a free blood pressure and sugar level screening, and for a cholesterol check, that would be a small fee of 10 ringgit, all right? And today we'd like you to also note that we are recording this conference for our global audience, so you may be able to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Principal Asset Management. And for those who are taking photographs and videos, please share that as well on your social media and consider our hashtags today, which is #Live After Work 2019, followed by #Principal MY. We would love to see all of your memories with us here today. All right, so getting back to our PRS conference, ladies and gentlemen, to better explain the gist of today's conversation, please draw your attention towards the screen for an interactive video presentation.
I never thought of myself as an author, but the other day, between all the meetings and conference calls, I heard someone say that lives are like stories. Wow, that stopped me. I mean, every day, don't we help people write the stories that become their lives? The beauty of it is that every story is different. Some are romances, some are adventures, some go viral, some are as ordinary as old socks. But here's the thing, every life story is real as it gets. I think the best stories are the ones that celebrate life's little victories, whether they're about getting ahead, giving back, or just growing old together. Truth is, we're all looking for happiness, however we define it. And no matter where we are or where we end up in life, our stories are all about getting there. When you look at it that way, the heart of our work is easy to grasp. Every day, around the world, we help people live their best lives. We prove one little step at a time that with the right financial partner, progress is possible. And as we help write their stories, we write great life stories of our own. We are Principal, and our new chapter is just beginning.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, today's event is the manifestation of Principal's continued commitment to helping our customers and stakeholders plan, save, and invest for their financial security. So our first speaker of the day, ladies and gentlemen, holds this topic very close to her heart. So to enlighten all of you further, please join me to welcome to the stage Munira Khairuddin, Chief Executive Officer, Principal Asset Management, Berhad.
I probably need to do my blood pressure checkup later. But ladies and gentlemen, it is with great honor and great pleasure to be here today. I'm extremely happy. I think we have in the hall about 300 of our esteemed customers, yourselves. So today is the fifth year that we are having our Principal Corporate PRS conference. And it gives me great pleasure to also welcome our ASEAN CEO, Mr. Juan Ezagirre, PPA CEO, Encik Husaini, ladies and gentlemen, Datuk, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. So I was talking in the hallway just now about retirement, and some of our friends and colleagues were saying, but I'm already 56 years old. I'm already 45 years old, right? Is it too late to plan for my retirement? And indeed, I'm in my 40s, and indeed, retirement is getting scarier and scarier. Why is it getting scarier and scarier? For Malaysians, the average mortality rate, women live slightly longer, about 75 years old, men about 73. That means we have a lot more years in our retirement. For some of us, 30 million population in Malaysia, only 14 million have mandatory pension. There is a government pension, but the rest of us, many of our Malaysians, do not even have enough retirement savings or savings alone. So this year is a very special year for us. Today, I'm standing in front of you as the Principal CEO for Malaysia. This year, we've rebranded. And personally for me, Principal is something special. I've been with the firm for 13 years. Why do I say Principal is quite special? You saw the video just now. We are headquartered in Des Moines, Iowa, in the Midwest in the US. And if you go there, people are genuinely very kind. And if you come to Des Moines, right, but the first time I went there was 13 years ago, I sat in the cabbie, and then they asked me, are you working with Principal? So I look at the taxi guy, how do you know? Because Principal is the largest employer. They're one of our best employer. And indeed, Principal has been around for 140 years. 140 years. Not many companies in the world have been around for 140 years. And what's the core proposition of Principal? It is to help people live the best of their lives. Principal is known in the US, in Latin America, and increasingly in Asia as a retirement expert. So don't worry, we will be here with you to help you through your retirement. When we talk about retirement, let's look at statistics. The Agency Counseling dan Pengurusan Kredit, which is like the credit government agency that looks into individual who have gone bankrupt, etc., have said that more than 50% of Malaysians may not be financially ready and secure for the retirement at the age of 60. In 2018, the Malaysian Financial Literacy Survey also found that almost half of Malaysians aged 35 and above have not even started on retirement. So this is very troubling, because what it means is that they will have more than 30 years without even basic savings. So this is why the government has introduced the private retirement schemes. You all know that we have EPF, which is a mandatory pension, only covers 14 million members. EPF today has 14 million members, of which 7 million are active. Active means to continue to contribute, employee and employer. So the other 7 million don't actively contribute. Add on to about another 16 million people who don't have any retirement. So when the government introduced PRS, it is as a third pillar of voluntary saving, right? Indeed, the government in the recent budget continued to support retirement, PRS, the tax incentives remain, and there's some flexibility for those who need to use the money for their medical bills. And therefore, I think, how do we continue with this agenda? Ladies and gentlemen, each and every one of you are a very important partner to Principal, a very important partner for the Malaysian ecosystem. Today, Principal is one of the leading pension provider. We have in excess of 740 million in assets under management under pension. We have more than 100,000 employees and members with us. That is not a small number. That is a big number in our 7th year in operation. We have more than 100 companies with us. We hold on my shoulders, you know, the responsibility of continuing to help many Malaysians out there to retire comfortably. So in all, it is for a good cause. And please, you know, let's applaud ourselves for being here in this room today, this morning, for a good cause. Can you join me for a round of applause? Many of you in this room today are CEOs, are CFOs, are COOs, are HR directors, are HR employees, and your support is monumental. Retirement is not a topic that people voluntarily want to talk about. You know, in any part of, you know, they've done a lot of psychology analysis that you don't think about as you get your paycheck, oh, I'm going to put aside money for retirement. We do that in Malaysia because, you know, we have our EPF deduction. But for those who don't have EPF, this doesn't come naturally. And even with EPF, you know that the amount that we have in EPF is not going to be enough. Many Malaysians will wait till 55 years old, take the money out, spend for their children's wedding, go for the vacation they've always wanted, start a new business at the age of 55, and then within 5 years realize they don't have enough. So in the US, one of the things that have been really successful is auto-enrollment. In there where the employer says, I will help you employees, I will help you dear employees because I owe you, you know, to retire comfortably after all the years that you've worked with me. I will auto-enroll you into a pension plan. If you strongly disagree, you may elect out. We don't have this in Malaysia, but I'm really hoping that one day the regulators and the Ministry of Labour will take this into consideration. Retirement is not a topic that people will voluntarily just say, I love it, I love savings for my retirement. People don't even want to talk about it. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we've lined out quite interesting topics. There will be a topic about how, if you don't plan for your medical, you will erode further into your retirement, and how important it is to pair up medical planning and retirement. We have a set of panelists who are our clients from various types of industry, and they will share with you why were they one of the first early adopters of PRS. And of course, today we will also award our most prestigious companies who've been with us, who've been really the employer of choice with respect to retirement. So ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Principal, I thank you once again. This is our 7th year. You know, they say there's a 7-year itch. I'm hoping that the next 7-year cycle, we will go for greater heights. Thank you for all your support in helping your employees have better financial lives in their retirement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Munira, for that welcome address and for setting the right frame of mind for the morning. And now, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed, we have a polling question that will appear on our LED screen. Just to gauge your frame of mind on the sentiment of this question. All right, so we have a look at the screen. Our first polling question today is, do you know how much you need to have in savings to live your retirement dreams? And the answers that we have is A, yes, and B, no. So if you can, just take a couple minutes to input your answer for this polling question. All right. There's 100% on no at the moment. So that is a no. We do not have enough in our savings to live our retirement dreams. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I believe our next speaker will be able to provide some clarity for the response from your answers today. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker has the privilege of leading Principal's long-term savings, investing, and pension operations in Asia. He has 30 years of experience in various senior positions in asset management, banking, insurance, and fund management. And here to share his insights on retirement readiness, lessons from around the world, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Juan Izaguirre, Chief Executive Officer, ASEAN Principal Asset Management, Berhad.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, thank you to be here. I have two big challenges today. The first one is that you can understand me. Because, I will give you my speech in a language that is not my own language. And maybe in a few seconds more you will realize that it's not your language either. But I come from Chile. My original language is Spanish. So if you don't understand some words, please ask your colleague or raise your hand maybe. My second challenge today is that at the end of this session, you can understand better what are our challenges in terms of the retirement scheme, and maybe think on how we can solve those challenges, or how we can move forward in that challenge. The title of this presentation is Creating a Sustainable Workforce, and the idea is to share some lessons that we have learned in our company across the globe. How this works? Okay. Yes. We have a lot of challenges. Let me give you some numbers here, just in Malaysia. The average savings for Malaysian in their EPF account is, at the age of 54 years old, is only 200,000 ringgits. 200,000 ringgits for their retirement age period, which is very low. 68% of the Malaysians at the age of 54 has only 50,000 ringgits in their account. And as you can withdraw all that money in a lump sum at the age of 55, more than 50% of them spend all their money, exhaust their money in 5 years or less. That means that all those people arrive to 60 years old with no money for their retirement. And that's very serious. That is very serious. Personally, let me just tell you some personal stories. It's just a coincidence, but when I was 25 years old, 30 years old, my major fear was to get old without money to live my retirement. I saw many stories, very close stories, relatives, and arrived to 65, 70 years old with no money. And they have a very miserable lives. And I said, I will not live that life. And later, I became to work in this company that works on that, helping people to achieve their retirement dreams, their long-term savings, and it's very good. So that helped me to create my own, let's say, plan into the future. But the idea is to share some ideas about that, to how to help everyone in this room, your employees, Malaysian people, and all our people around the globe to create that path. That's the idea. To share some things, I want to show you some little video about what principle is and how we think about that matter, and then we will continue our presentation.
One of the common themes that we see throughout the globe is that the publicly funded retirement systems are simply not adequate to provide financially secure retirement. It's just not enough.
There is no longer the average citizen. So normally when you're setting, public policies, it's like you're designing things for the average citizen. That average citizens, it is no longer out there. So every person is a case.
In a situation like this, where the population is aging rapidly and there are less people going into the workforce and more people taking money out of the pension pot, the government pension pot, then what happens is that we foresee that the pressure on pension systems in Asia will grow tremendously over the next 2 or 3 decades.
That the solution is going to be based and built using different ways in order to save money. So offering many different vehicles to different citizens with different realities in order to help them in order to work, plan, and invest in their financial security.
It is a combination of education, a combination of products, and a combination of service that will make sure that this is a successful initiative.
And so when we work with governments in order to advocate and advance sound pension policy, we're looking at both the public pension systems and how they're designed and how they're funded and the level of benefits that are being provided, as well as the opportunity to create the right regulatory framework to advance voluntary savings as well. There isn't a country anywhere that's not wrestling with these issues. Every country has their unique needs. Every country has different sets of expectations around who is responsible for providing income in retirement.
One common theme across all these markets is that as population ages rapidly, it is not sustainable to rely only on the government pension system, and there is an urgent need to build up the voluntary system.
Individuals and citizens, they have to figure out and they have to be aware that they have to take care about this problem. And they do have solutions, and they have to save more, and they have to plan and invest in order to work and to look for the best of their life.
Our company principle was created about 150 years ago in Des Moines, Iowa, based on one simple idea from our founder, Edward Temple, to make the life insurance policy easier and more affordable for the bankers, customers, and employees. Then the company evolved, and in 1981, I think, maybe they can help me, we changed to the name of Principal Financial Group. But the statement is the same: help our customers and employees achieve their better life, live their better life, and live their dreams. We're working on that. Outside the States, we're working in these markets, and we face exactly the same problems everywhere in terms of pensions. Public pensions that cannot afford the requirements for their people, that they don't save enough for their retirement. Of course, with different degrees. The numbers I just share with you about Malaysia, we see the same in Brazil, in Chile, in Mexico, in Hong Kong. We will see some numbers later. But we are helping all these people. We have more than 22 million customers outside the States, and we are working on that. Let me show you some what worries us. What are the trends that are very scary for me? If I were in a government position, I would be very scared what I saw. But let me share with you what are these trends. The first one, everybody knows that people are getting older and older. And that is, everybody thinks that. But that creates a lot of pressure in our pension system. In this presentation and everywhere when you talk about pension, you see always a magical number, which is 65. 65 years old. They compare the people that are 65 years old and older with the ones that are younger. Oh, that number 65 appears always. All the pension system begins with a retirement age of 65. Do you know where that number comes from? Why 65 instead of 62 or 60 or 70? Well, the story says that the first pension system was created more or less in the late 1892, 1895 more or less in Germany, by the Kaiser von Bismarck. And he created a public pension system saying that all the workers can work up to 65 and then retire and receive a pension from the government. It's okay. And why 65? Very easy. Life expectancy was 65 years old. So the underlying message in the German industry was, you have to work until death. If you survive your life expectancy, I will pay you a pension. And the ones that survive receive a pension in average of 2 years, 3 years, no more than that. And it works. But later, 130 years later, people are living longer. But at the same time, they want to retire earlier. In some countries, retirement age is 60, someone's 55, in others 50 years old at retirement, which makes a very crazy things because their labor period, they begin at 25, ends at 50, is shorter than their retirement age, which is maybe 30, 35 years long. So that creates a lot of problems, that creates a lot of deficit of young workers and of course surplus of agings and elderly, that create a lot of pressures because the public pensions cannot afford that. Any pension system has the 3 pillars. The pillar 1, which is the public one, the social pension, the basic pension system, the pillar 2, which is the mandatory for everyone, and then the pillar 3, which is the voluntary. The first 2 pillars are not enough to pay the pensions that they want to receive later. And one thing that is very important is that we are increasingly going to an area of personal responsibility with some instant gratification. With technology, people are looking for that instant gratification, which is good. But in pensions, your gratification will come much later, not instantly. So how we balance those requirements is a very difficult thing. And for example, getting older. Here in Malaysia, you have only 7% of the people which have 65 or more against the total population. But in 2050, will be 20%. And the amount of people, the amount of people in that category, 65 and older, will grow by 96%. In other countries, is much the numbers are much bigger. Hong Kong, Thailand. Thailand is the most fast aging population in the world. They will have 42% of their people on 65 and more than that in 2050. And of course, the pension system cannot afford that. At the same time, this graph shows you why the old system, the pay-as-you-go system, the public ones, doesn't work in the future. This shows the left side bar shows that people that are 65 and over against the working age adults. In Malaysia, with 10%, still works. That means that 10 working people has to fund or pay the pension for a retiree. With that 10%, it works. But when it goes to 28, to 30 or 40%, doesn't work. That's why all the old system, the pay-as-you-go systems, are in very serious financial problems, and most of them are in bankruptcy. So that's why they are creating more private and voluntary systems that can help this process. Well, other countries are much worse than in Malaysia. The World Bank says that a very good target for retirement is to have a replacement rate of 70%. Means that your pension could be 70% of your last salary, or your average of your salary in the last maybe 2-3 years. Any country achieved that target, any country. And here in Malaysia, we have a replacement rate of 34%, only 34%. In Chile, we have 39%. In other countries, 56%. Maybe you have read that, unfortunately, in my country, in Chile, we have a lot of protests these days. Many people protesting for everything. One of the reasons is because pensions are very low. We have a 39%. And they are low, but they are much lower than expected, because the promise that the government made 40 years ago was that the replacement rate would be 70%. What happened? Let me a little story about Chile. The Chilean system, the private pension system in Chile, was created in 1981 with a private system, voluntary the Pillar 2 and Pillar 3, and the promise was 70%. At that moment, retirement age was 65 years old, but life expectancy for men was 74. So the system has to fund 9 years of retirement in average. Today, retirement age is still 65, but life expectancy went to 84. So instead of 9 years, we have to fund 19 years, which means it's impossible, with the same rate, contribution rate, and the interest rate and everything, and all the problems that we have today. So the point is, how we close that gap? How we close that gap? How we achieve that 70% to have a good retirement life? And at the same time, this is for the, can we go back? This is for the formal market, the people that has EPF account, that receive a salary, blah, blah, blah. But what happened with the informal market, which is very big? In Malaysia, we have 33%. These numbers includes the real informal people and what we call the GIG economy, those economy that is based in flexible works, part-time, self-employment, and those things. That doesn't pay any contribution for the pension system. 1/3 in Malaysia, 41% in Chile, and Indonesia, 86%. So at the end, as I said before, if I were in the government space, I would be very worried, because the formal one, which is only 2/3 of the population, will receive a very low pension, and 1/3 will receive nothing. That will create a lot of social pressure, fiscal pressure for demands, and of course, that will come maybe not next year. In my country arrived already 2 weeks ago, but maybe in some years from now. How we can manage that expectations will be very complex. Let me share with you some lessons that we learned from other countries, trying to implement some things, here in Malaysia. The participation in the voluntary system here in Malaysia is very low. As the end of September, the contributors in the PRS system in Malaysia are about 468,000, which represent, as Monia said, about 7% of the active accounts and the active EPF accounts. Only 7% of the active EPF accounts contributes in PRS. 3% of the total EPF accounts, but only 1.4% of the labor force, which is very low. There are many reasons that explain that. Very low tax incentives, corporates doesn't create a very corporate plans in terms of matching and as a tool of HR policy. I think most of the companies think in PRS as a corporate social responsibility initiative that normally has a very low priority. If the companies can create something like a HR policy to retain talent, to manage talent, as an engagement tool with some matching process, vesting process, could create a huge difference to increase that 1.4%. In other countries, Brazil has 14%, Chile has almost 11%, and that is based on the conditions that the government creates in terms of tax incentives, participation rates, matching factors, vesting, and others. That means with this, the good thing of these plans is that you can give benefits to all of your employees. Normally in other countries, when you create only tax benefits, are very good for the higher salaries employees, but not for the lower salaries employees. But with these plans, you can give benefits to all your employees, which is better for the company and for them. Here is a comparison between Malaysia and Chile. The replacement rate in Malaysia is much lower than Chile, 34 against 39, even though the contribution rate in Malaysia is 23% and in Chile is only 10%. In Chile, the system began 40 years ago with a 10% contribution rate and hasn't changed in those 40 years. And today, these days, our authorities realize that 10% is not enough. So there is a law in Chile to increase that 10% to 14%, and that 4% has to be paid by employers. And at the same time, the third pillar in Chile has an 11% participation rate in the labor force, which only 1% in Malaysia. So that to create a really strong third pillar in the pension system for corporates, employers and employees is very important to close that gap. In UK and New Zealand, they create what they call the automate the experience, make it easier. They can the automatic enrollment, the automatic escalation, the auto sweep, target date funds. To make it easier, they can do it by themselves. And there's some very, very strong figures. In UK, before the automate experience, only 47%, they have a 47% participation rate in the labor force of their companies. After the automation, the numbers went to 64. UK before numbers are on 2012, after data is 2015, only 3 years difference. In New Zealand, the number went from 17 to 71. The before data in New Zealand is 2009, the after one is 2015, 6 years difference. So that makes a big difference, making that the people once can make their process by themselves in a very easy way. In China, the lesson in China is about technology. When you create some digital platforms that enables the people to go and look their accounts and make some investment and switchings, the numbers are incredible, as all the numbers in China. In China, we have a joint venture with CCB, China Construction Bank, and they create that platform. And you know, in 18 months, they had 3 million customers. Maybe for China, 3 million is nothing, but 3 million is a huge amount of people that creates their own plan in this digital platform, because it is very important to meet their customers where they interact, to make it easier. And the other thing that I want to share with you is that we call, in the United States, we have a program that says that my virtual coach. is a software that is created just for education, to educate the people in terms of their plans. What are their plans, what they are getting from their account, how, if they are achieving their goals or not. And all the numbers shows that education really works. The people need education. Normally the financial literacy is very low, so they are looking for how to improve their knowledge. In employers and employees normally has a very good relationship, and employees turn to their employees to validate what they are doing. Employers has to be aware of what is going on, and of course we are there to help them to improve their educational process and to increase their financial literacy. But education really works, and all the numbers in terms of contribution, deferrals and those things in this process shows that with education the people really invest more in that, in their plans, trying to close that gap. And the main takeaways in this process to be focused on the employee are these 5. To reach more and enhance their experience through digital means, that is very important. Offer financial education, that is always important. It's an endless process to increase their financial education. Leverage these behavioral economics and automate experiences is always there, is always important as well. Financial investments, financial incentives, tax incentives, another from the government side. And of course, from our side, provide sound plan designs with investment best practices, because those plans are very long term and we have to design them to have the better return of their investment for their plans. Finally, the challenge that we have in pensions is very, very big. Nobody by themselves can solve it. So let's say it's a team approach. The policymakers, the workers, the employers, and the retirement providers has to work together to create a solution for their employees and the people itself to close that gap, Just to finish, I want to finish with this slide about these 2 words. How do you find optimistic or pessimistic? How do you find it? Normally, people define optimistic that person that looks the future with optimism, look the future with hope, think that good things will come to him. While the pessimistic is the ones that look the future with pessimism, with no hope, thinks that bad things will come. That is a normal definition. I don't like that. I really don't like that. My personal definition is that optimistic is the person that no matter what he sees in the future, good things or bad things, he thinks that he has to build their own future. He has something to say and to do to build that future. If he thinks that good things are coming, well, how to take more advantage of that? Or if he thinks that bad things are coming, well, how we can reverse that thing or change that situation to get good benefits for that future. While the pessimistic is the one that sees the future as in a passive way. If good things are coming, I will receive those fruits the same that others, no difference. Or if bad things are coming, I will suffer that consequences. The difference between optimistic and pessimistic is not how they see the future, it's how they build their own future. So, between being optimistic or pessimistic, which one will be your choice? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Juan, for your speech and your presentation, and for shedding light on the experience and how Principal is delivering its mission to the region. And as mentioned by Juan, it is very important for us to understand the demographics of changes and the structural issues of pension funds and digitization such as auto enrollment. For without a one-size-fits-all solution, taking charge of retirement means closely following the trends and addressing the challenges. And as we've listened to Juan's presentation, ladies and gentlemen, we now will come to a second polling question. But before that, if any of you may be having troubles or difficulties logging into the mobile application, we do have a password which you can use to log in. And the password is 2019 PRS. That's 2019, small letters PRS. So once you log in, just tap into our session and tap into the polling question session as well, okay? So as we look at the screens, our question here, as we know, the reality of retirement around the world, so we will gauge on how you react to this specific question, which is, are you willing to do something additional for you or your employees to improve retirement plans? All right, you have two options there, which is yes and no. So just tap on your answers in and we'll see if this graph changes in any way. So I believe that a lot of you are saying yes, you are willing to do something to improve retirement plans, which also comes under notion, as Juan has mentioned, optimism to take charge and build a future for your employees. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have our third polling question. So before we head towards our next speaker, we will be speaking about post-retirement and healthcare costs. So let's engage in this specific question, which is, medical bills make up a large percentage of one's post-retirement cost of living. This can be as much as. So we can see that some people have tapped into the polling question already, and we'll just wait a couple of seconds to see if there are any changes in this graph. We have either 10%, or as much as 30%, or as much as 50% right there on the screen. All right, so okay, we see a little bit, and it's now growing up to 30%. That's possibly about a maybe, but our prominent answer on the screen is that medical bills will take up a lot of our retirement at the age of 60. As you can see, that is 50%. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I believe we can all agree that with the notion that health is wealth, right? So to share more on this topic and the idea that it's not just a healthcare concern, but it is also a financial concern. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as we welcome our next speaker, Dr. Shahruniza Mohammed Shahir, KPJ Healthcare Berhad. And just to share with you a little bit, Dr. Shahruniza is an experienced consultant general surgeon involved in a multitude of general surgery cases and has also been invited to a few TV stations as an expert speaker in various surgical topics. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Doctor, the mic is now yours.
Thank you, Gabriela. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. And a very good morning, distinguished guests, members of the audience, and members of the press. Allow me firstly to thank Principal Asset Management for inviting me to speak about a topic which I have been wanting to share with an audience at large. Okay, firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. Shahruniza bin Mat Shahir. I'm a consultant general surgeon at KPJ Rawang Specialist Hospital. I started my career in the medical field in 1997, and I have served both in government from 1997 to about 2015, before I joined private in 2015 until now. All right, when I was first given this topic, I thought, well, this is definitely not my cup of tea because I am actually a practicing general surgeon. So what do I got to do with these bills, retirement things? But after a while, after giving a second thought, I was in government for quite some time before I joined private. And I can see the difference between the treatment in the government hospital, the treatment in the private hospital, and the cost that the patient has to bear. So I think, yeah, I am actually the right person to talk about this topic. All right, as a medical practitioner in the age of dollars and cents, I have witnessed a significant number of times of patients refusing treatment and care due to financial constraints. Regardless of our keen and earnest intention as medical practitioners to help, it's a sight for sore eyes and heartbreaking to deal with. This is a very real issue, ladies and gentlemen. It goes beyond numbers, beyond statistics. We are talking real human cases here. Most of the time, patients come in without realizing this truth. The astronomical cost which many cannot afford. Sharing my personal experiences in the conference, which specifically talks about this topic, is very timely. Here is the truth. Hospital bills at retirement are budget killers. And the reality on the ground is much tougher to swallow than the statistic. Allow me to share some real-life experience and situations where patients had to pull out of treatment because the bill is too much for them. There's a case of a 64-year-old man who was diagnosed to have a colorectal cancer and was advised to go for a surgery to remove the cancer. As he has no insurance, he asked me the cost of full treatment of the cancer, which include the surgery and the adjuvant chemo and radiotherapy. After knowing the cost, which might reach hundreds of thousands, he decided to be referred to the government hospital. Don't get me wrong, expertise and medical facilities in government hospital is just as good, if not better. But when you're sick and ill, you want people close to you to be around you, your families, your close friends, at least for moral support. And in this area, the comfort of having a single room, for example, in our government hospital, is very limited. And then there's a case of a 72-year-old man who has a heart attack and landed in the emergency department in our hospital. He was stabilized in the emergency department and was told of the need to go for an urgent angiogram, emergency angiogram. Not much choice, so some deposits were requested. Patients and family managed to find some of the deposits required, and they proceeded with the emergency angiogram. However, some complications rises during the angiogram, and he ended up in a long stay in ICU. As the bills of the hospitals kept increasing day by day, you know the ICU charges is double, triple of the normal ward. He requested to be transferred out. Even after explaining the risk of transfer in an unstable condition, patient and family still insisted on being transferred out, that they're willing to discharge AOR at own risk. Very sad. The fear of medical cost makes them willing to risk their life. It is a global crisis which doctors around the world are familiar with. It is a deep concern, and it gets worse when the conventional thought process towards the ideal retirement is about saving for a house, a dream holiday, a good education for the kids, or simply a long pent-up desire to own something post-retirement. But many miss the real culprit of the issue, which is the cost of healthcare. Through the centuries of human civilization, medical technology has advanced so rapidly in terms of improving our quality of life and allowed us to live longer. With the breakthroughs and applications of the latest technology, we are able to track medical records seamlessly with remote monitoring tools through wearable technology. iWatch, for example, tracks our heartbeat. In Sweden, the technology of microchipping, where patients are implanted with a tracker in their arms that can actually remotely monitor their conditions. Hospital would be able to know if they are having a heart attack, and immediate help can be dispatched to their location. Scientists are now also able to predict the emergence of epidemics such as Ebola, influenza, and cholera, cures for cancer and other diseases which were terminal in the past have been found and constantly being innovated. We are now able to avoid preventable death by the emergence of new drugs and technologies. However, ladies and gentlemen, longevity also comes at a price. While we all strive to live longer, we will outlive our assets if our savings are not able to catch up with the medical bills. This is sadly becoming a global trend. We are seeing retirement saving becoming less and less enough for healthcare. It falls back to the idea of ignorance is bliss, failing to plan and unreadiness for unexpected life events. According to the National Strategy for Financial Literacy document, 52% of Malaysians have difficulty to raise even 1,000 for emergency fund. And according to our finance minister, in September 2019, almost half of all Malaysians are uninsured. You will be surprised to find that those who are insured with year-round health insurance coverage will still accumulate medical bills which they can't afford to buy. What more those who are totally not insured? They have nothing to fall back on. That is the harsh reality of healthcare today. We simply do not have enough. Adding to that, medical cost is expected to rise. According to a PwC Healthcare Institute study, medical cost is set to a 6% increase in 2020. This is due to three major factors. Drugs depending grows faster. Chronic diseases continue to plague the populace, and also increased awareness of mental health, which adds on to more research and expenditure. This means an increase in the cost of surgery, cost of prescriptions, administrative costs, medical products, and service. According to WHO, the top killer diseases among Malaysians are still coronary heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and stroke. In fact, on my way here just now, on Light FM, I heard that actually 15 people die of heart attack every day in Malaysia. Very alarming, right? These diseases are not cheap to treat. Treatment for heart attack costs 40,000 to 120,000, depending whether you're just going for simple angiogram or you have to go for bypass surgery. And in 30 years, it might go around until 700,000 and $2 million. As for strokes, expect to pay around 150,000 to 225,000. In 30 years, it will be around 2.4 million to 5.2 million. Very staggering. Cancer is another killer, with a whopping cost of 50,000 to 60,000 currently, with an estimate that it would quadruple in the next 30 years. The Department of Statistics Malaysia in 2016 collected some alarming figures of post-retirement cost of living and healthcare cost. Semi-independent living can go up to 37,000 per year, while those with a nursing care dependency, 40,000 per year. These estimates do not include the biggest wild cards in retirement, long-term care plan, or what is commonly known as geriatric care. These costs are catastrophic and can deplete our savings for decades, depending on the level of care required. Even more so when 68% of EPF members aged 54 only have less than 50,000. Longevity, ladies and gentlemen, can be either a blessing or a burden. I have seen many families suffer financial ruin by having their savings depleted, by having to foot the bill on such diseases on behalf of their parents, relatives, and close friends. So, ladies and gentlemen, a general rule of thumb, as a medical practitioner, I can tell you, you can have a good, fast, and cheap. No, I'm sorry. You wish to have this good, fast, and cheap treatment. But unfortunately, most of the time you can only have two of three. For example, if you go to a government hospital, you might save on the cost and you might get a good treatment. But you know the waiting list in the government hospital to get the first appointment itself sometimes takes about 2 to 3 months. I have a curious question here. Have you ever heard of the term medical bankruptcy? All right? Okay, this medical bankruptcy is actually when a person is forced to file for a bankruptcy from unpaid medical bills. And this is actually a fact. It is the #1 bankruptcy filing in the United States now and has outpaced credit card bills and unpaid mortgages. People with medical debts are forced to the extremes when their savings are gone and credit cards are maxed out. They take drastic steps by skimping on groceries, reducing medicine dosages, cutting back on prescription medication, and this will only trigger more health problems in the future. Beyond the health sphere, people with medical debt will delay rental payments, miss paying bills, so on and so forth, which can then lead to more serious social problems. It is a very troubling issue, even for myself. So my advice to you is save and invest as much as you can, early and often. However, the world isn't going to stop. Healthcare expenditure will continue to rise because the population growth, aging population, prevalence of diseases, medical service utilization, service price, and intensity. These problems are not only exclusive to only our countries. Healthcare expenditure will also continue to rise due to the double whammy of non-communicable and infectious diseases, new technologies, and increasing patients' demand. Okay, if I may gauge the audience for a bit here, by a show of hands, may I know how many of you are above 50 here? Okay, not above 40? Right. And above 30? Okay, so the rest are younger than 30. Okay, that's good. Okay. This is the age where you need to be very careful and take good care of yourself. Nearing the age of retirement, 50, 60, coincidentally, there are a number of diseases that are age-related. So for those who are still free of disease, you are considered lucky. It goes from diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, high blood pressure, cataracts, osteoporosis, cancer, so on and so forth. And no one gets to choose their DNA, and for some, poor health come with a high cost they cannot avoid. Healthcare and well-being essentially boil down to how we are able to improve our financial well-being, increase financial literacy. And with healthcare costs continuing to climb upwards, you need to get ahead of this cost and invest your money in something that can do better than interest rates from cash. I was told that the returns from PRS have outperformed benchmarks and their corporate plan is without sales charge. Well, I have to say that I'm not from the principal, but as a practicing surgeon and doctor, I feel that I contributed a little bit to this problem because the life expectancy has increased due to us. So I think I have to support them a little bit. The company which I work for, KPJ, is already in the plan 4 years ago. Our HR facilitates a payroll reduction. Every month, we spend only what is left, and this is the right approach to spending. Among my peers, we have that time in between surgeries and attending patients, we sometimes discuss market outlook and compare funds and some investments. We challenge each other to put in more. We see many patients having to go home without treatment because they can't afford it. We try to avoid facing that situation. I remember having a sharing session with Ms. Jasmine from Principal. She mentioned that if we don't help people invest for their healthcare, we are missing the real meaning of retirement planning. This is a testament of an asset management company that goes the extra mile. They look at people, not just profit. A company whose mission is to help their customers live their best life certainly needs to have a decent number of human touch. Ladies and gentlemen, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with twisting the car key and start the engine. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I retrofitted the saying to modern times. Just like how Principal is pushing us forward with their offerings, and I personally feel in this journey, this is the first step. Now that you are aware of what lies ahead, wait no further. Take action. Start putting your money to work. If there's one key message you walk away with from my session today, it is to save and invest as much as you can, early and often. Before I end, ladies and gentlemen, I would like just to remind everyone that there will be a Q&A session after my presentation. And if you have any related question, you can have it up on Slido, and we will take it from there. Also, as our MC has mentioned, do visit our KPJ booth outside for health screening. Thank you very much again for having me here and allowing me to share my experience, and I hope we can take charge of our finances.
Thank you very much for presenting your speech. And please remain on stage for the question and answer session. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look towards the screen now, you'll see that we will be having the step-by-step guide on the Slido app where you can insert your questions for our speakers, all right? And with that, we shall move on and take our first question, which I believe should be already on the application. So, Doctor, the question here is, you are saying that in 30 years, the medical costs will reach millions. How can PRS help retirees on this compared insurance company if the coverage is not enough? So how can PRS help retirees in comparison with insurance companies if the coverage is not enough?
All right. When you start savings, for example, you start savings from now, you have your objective ready. Your savings will be used for certain things. For, like I mentioned just now, for your kids' education, for something that you have dreamed of for quite a long time. And of course, a portion of it is for your health scheme. Then let's, for example, by the end of your retirement, you have all this large sum of money. Are you going to use all this for your retirement dream, or for your child's education, and so on? And how much left that you can set aside for your healthcare? You don't know about that. But with this kind of retirement scheme, actually, they will help you to actually plan how much you can set aside for your health care, for your other things that you dream of. So in that sense, you will be disciplined enough so that you won't misuse your retirement scheme, and then your healthcare benefit will be taken care of.
And that answers that question. And we will now take another question, which is, given low awareness on healthcare costs, how do you suggest such crucial issues may be made known to the general public?
All right. This is actually a teamwork, a concerted effort, where requiring involvement from the Ministry of Health, for example, working together with health practitioners to roll out awareness drive. That's the important point, the awareness drive, where, for instance, talk at public forums, Health Awareness Week, mobile outreach to rural areas, and so on. So you can see this is a team approach, so that you can't do this alone on your own. Everybody needs to play a role.
And we now take our next question. What lifestyle changes should we make now to avoid being one of the statistics?
All right, lifestyle changes is something that is being spoken widely about. Everybody knows about it. We have to have a healthy diet, we have to have adequate exercises, and all those things. But the one thing is, are we strong enough? Are we disciplined enough to do all those things? So in order to be encouraged to do all those things, you have to remember the cost of being sick is not cheap. So if you know, for those, I don't know, maybe some of you here already diagnosed with some kind of chronic diseases, diabetes, or for example, heart disease, coronary artery disease. If you were able to turn back time, I'm sure you would do things differently, right? You would start exercising, you start to eat healthy and balanced diet, and those are the things that will encourage you to have a healthy lifestyle.
And we now move on to our next question, Doctor, which is if you could change one thing about our healthcare system, what would that be?
All right, if I can change things, well, I wish I can change the tax code, the rules, the regulation, the laws, everything, so that the government, the government can force people to save. So this is not easy to do. It's a constant effort again. So as I mentioned earlier, employers, for example, employers here can play a pivotal role in empowering the employees to invest. Not wise to put our lives in the hand of others. We should start building our own coffers. Those who control the healthcare dollars control the healthcare system. Right?
Thank you very much. And we now proceed to another question. Doctor, is there any genetic factor to top 5 diseases which you talked about earlier? If there is prevention possible?
All right, if you're talking about genetic factors, you have to understand the two different things between genetics and familial. Familial meaning that you have the risk of developing that disease. But if you're talking about genetics, you will get the disease. So that's the two different things between genetic and familial. I think the more important part is question is this: is there any familial genetic familial factor? If you're talking about genetic factor, then that's it. You will get it. For example, who's that actress who has the breast removed? Angelina Jolie, is it? He has certain genetics which she will definitely get a breast cancer in the future. So, in order to be safe, she had the breast removed, even before there's any signs or symptoms. That is genetic, ladies and gentlemen. Or sometimes you have a children's condition where it started off when they're still young, a neonate. So that is genetic things. But if you're talking about familial is, for example, your parents have diabetes, your parents have hypertension or ischemic heart disease. You have the risk of developing that condition. So if you know your family history, you have the choice. You have a choice to lead a healthier life, to be careful about yourself, and to have a treatment, or you have to go and visit a doctor early when you have a slightest symptoms. Okay? So if you ask me whether you can prevent it or not, yes. If you're talking about familial condition, you can prevent it. Just aware of your family history, and then just to take good care of yourself. But if you're talking about genetic things, then the only way possible is to have your screening, whatever, early.
Thank you very much. And we have another question for you, Doctor. So if we just have a look at the screen. Shouldn't doctors be encouraged to stay reasonable with their charges? Some consultation fees aren't reasonable. And your thoughts on this statement?
All right. Thank you for the question. I love this question. All right, when you go for an appendicectomy, have anyone ever gone for an appendicectomy here? Have the appendix removed? No, no one? All still have the appendix? No, congratulations. Okay, if you go for appendicectomy, for example, the cost can be ranging from 12,000 to 18,000. Depends on whether you have any complications, whether it's a laparoscopic and open surgery. But do you know that the surgeon's fees are only like 2,000? So the rest of the bills is something that we cannot control. Well, if you want, I can try to suggest to my management to reduce the price, but I don't think that will change much. But if you ask me whether we should lower down the price, depends. Whether, okay, some cases you definitely cannot lower down the price because the procedures itself, the medication itself, all those are determined by the market price, by the companies that provide the medication, by the companies that provide the instruments. So there's nothing much we can change about that. But if we can change on our side, of course, we will try to change to minimize the cost. We will do that. But it's not for me to decide. Actually.
It's a very insightful session with you, Doctor. Ladies and gentlemen, let's keep those questions coming in. As a doctor yourself, have you saved enough for your retirement? Is it enough to cover healthcare costs?
Okay. All right. For your information, I'm also a customer. Should I call customer? Customer of PRS. So I am. But when I just first joined, my aim is just to reduce my tax payment, basically. But after a while, I started to increase my payment because I can see the cost of the medical bills is increasing at an alarming state. So I don't want to get trapped where I can't even go for a 20,000 surgery. I don't want to get trapped into that. So at least I have something to fall back on when the need arises. Of course, if I can't afford it, then I have to ask for my friends in the government hospital.
All right, and let's have the next question, please. Do you agree that some doctors in private hospitals have given medical advice, for example, surgery, which is not necessary in certain scenarios due to profit gain purposes?
Yep, I agree. Well, doctors suggest doctors. We are not angels. We are human beings. So some of us, I do agree that a little bit unethical in the sense that they will advise things which is not really necessary in the first place. So for patients, for publics, it is advisable for you to not shop around, but sometimes get a second opinion. When you are being advised to go for something, you are being advised for a certain treatment, it is your right to go for a second opinion. So if you feel that you are not being fairly advised, seek second opinion.
I think many of us can agree that it is always important to seek a second opinion when it comes to our health. All right, so is there a real difference between quality of treatment in government and private hospitals?
I was from government hospital last time. In 2015, I left for private. Well, if you ask me about the quality of treatment in terms of consultation, in terms of surgeries, in terms of facilities, I think there is not much difference actually. In fact, some of the best surgeons are still at the government side. Some of the more advanced technologies are still on the government side. But what private can offer that is not in the government side is things, for example, your kid is being diagnosed with dengue, for example, and she has to be admitted to hospital. In a government hospital, you won't be able to bring your whole family, not the whole family, your other kids to the ward. It's very limited. Probably they will allow only one, and then what are you going to do with the rest of your kids at home? You have problems there, right? But in a private hospital, you have that advantage of you are being allowed to bring your other kids there. just for the comfort of your sick kid. Of course, this is not advisable, but sometimes things, you don't have much choice. You have to take all these advantage in a private hospital. So if you can't afford to go to a private hospital, you should try to go to a private hospital, and beside the treatment that you will be offered, you can also have other perks that won't be seen in a government hospital. But of course, if you don't have much choice, the government hospital, the treatment is just as good.
Thank you very much, Doctor. And we have now come to the end of a question and answer session. Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, Doctor, please remain on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him a big round of applause for sharing his insights with us. And now, Doctor, we would like to present you with a token of appreciation. And to have the honors, we would now like to invite to the stage Munira Khairuddin, CEO, Principal Asset Management, Berhad, to please present this token to Dr. Shahruniza. Thank you very much once again, Doctor. Thank you for your presentation. You may now return to your seat. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now come to one of the highlights of our event here today. We have the PRS Award ceremony. Now, this is a commitment towards welfare of the employee, which forges a very meaningful bond between the company and its employee for their dedication in following footsteps of successful global companies. We are presenting the Best in Class and Employer of Choice Awards. And this is our way, ladies and gentlemen, to honor the unwavering commitment and dedication by our partners in enhancing employee well-being and for being a trusted partner of Principal Asset Management. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, to present these awards, I would like to invite to the stage once again Munira Khairuddin, the CEO and Principal Asset Management, Berhad. For the top 10 Employer of Choice Awards, which goes according to the value of asset under management, ladies and gentlemen, we award Selcom Axiata Berhad, big smiles for the camera right there. Congratulations to Selcom. Please kindly remain on stage. And next, ladies and gentlemen, please join us to applaud IJM Corporation, Berhad. Congratulations, and we would like you to also please remain on stage. And to continue, please applaud Silterra Malaysia, Sendirian Berhad. Congratulations. And next, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Kuku International Malaysia Sundari and Berhad. Congratulations. And moving on to our next awardee, ladies and gentlemen, we have UEM Group Berhad. Big smiles and congratulations to UEM Group Berhad. Next, ladies and gentlemen, is Proton Holding Berhad. Congratulations. And next, ladies and gentlemen, please give them a big round of applause. We have Berjaya Starbucks Coffee, Sundari and Berhad. Congratulations. And next, we would like to award Howden Insurance Brokers Sundari and Berhad. Congratulations. And the next awardee is Federal Express Service Malaysia Sundari and Berhad. Congratulations. And to join our top 10 Employer of Choice Awards, ladies and gentlemen, is KPJ Healthcare Berhad. Congratulations, KPJ Healthcare. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to invite Juan Izaguirre, CEO, ASEAN Principal Asset Management Berhad, to please come forward and join Munera on stage to present the next award. For being Principal's long-time strategic partner and excellence in the pursuit of employee well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to our special recognition award recipient, CIMB Group Berhad. Big congratulations once again to CIMB Group Berhad for the Special Recognition Award. And now to all of our award recipients, we would like you to please maneuver towards center stage as we would like to capture a group photograph. To all of our photographers who are with us, if you'd like to come down to the center and capture this photo, please do so. And there you have them, ladies and gentlemen. Please give them another big round of applause. The Top 10 Employer of Choice Awards, along with the Special Recognition Award. And congratulations once again. Thank you very much. You may all now kindly return to your seats. And thank you very much, Munira and Juan, for presenting the awards to the award recipients. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as we move forward with the rest of our program, Principal has come a very long way through triumphs and tribulations since the year 2012. And we're very glad that we have made it to this milestone. So to commemorate this milestone with all of you here today, we prepared a video montage on PRS journey. So ladies and gentlemen, please once again draw your attention to the screen and enjoy the video. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the journey of Principal PRS since the year 2012. And we now come to present an introduction for our next presenter, who will speak about this very strategy on advancing employee well-being by navigating funds towards the right market and how we are able to educate our partners towards the right investment concepts. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me again to welcome to the stage Principal Asset Management very own Chief Investment Officer, Patrick Chung.
Giving things away. Good morning, everyone. It's on behalf of the investment team, I would like to extend a big thank you for the organizers for putting myself here today. when I was preparing for this session, I was actually thinking about my journey, about how I invested for my retirement. And my journey actually started only when I turned just over 40. I'm still young, right? And so I think I'm young, and I think I don't want to invest so early. And so I started thinking about this when I actually turned bald, about 8 years ago. And this journey started because my children started joking with me and said, are you getting old? Are you really planning for retirement and all that, right? And then it really got to me, and I decided to start planning. And the realization I got was that if I had learned this much earlier and I planned much earlier, the benefits of investments and the compounding of investments and the power of using the tools that we have today, we'll be able to retire with much more capital that we talked about in terms of savings, and be able to appreciate the kind of goals that we want to achieve over the long term. And so in the next 20 minutes or so, I want to enlighten you on my journey of how I look at investments, how I think about retirement, and how I'm going to basically share with you how we will think about planning for your future and your employees. And so you've heard a lot today about the powers of investment for retirement, early adoption of retirement, but I think also at the same time, we also want to encourage all the participants here to stay motivated about the volatility that we're seeing in the markets today, and to stay focused, and also, more importantly, to plan what our goals are today for our future. So when you think about the powers of investment, the first thing that we always think about is how do we save, right? There are many, many sources of savings that we have, right? Whether it's going to be through our EPF, whether it's going to be through our bonus, whether it's going to be through our housing, and so forth, right? And we need to start thinking about that through our savings, right? And the second point as well is that which doctor just now scared the hell out of me, was that this whole thing about inflation. We only think about inflation when we think about food inflation or the cost of living inflation. But we also forget that medical is a big part, right? I'm in a very stressful job. And my boss, Munir, always very concerned about how my blood pressure goes up. When markets go up, I go down, right? And therefore, I'm going to go for a check after this and to make sure that my blood pressure stays down. But the reality of life is that healthcare inflation can only go one way, and that is up. Food inflation can only go one way, and that is up. Standard of living will only go one way, and that's up. And we forget about this as we plan for our investments, right? And I want to talk a bit about that later on. And also at the same time, we also forget of the power of the instrument of compounded interest and earnings. And so the beauty about early investments, especially through a PRS scheme and also through some of the investments you have within us, is that the compounded interest can make you a lot of returns over the long term. And so we talk about the sources of investments, right? So typically, for us in the private sector, we have the PEPF savings, which contribute about 23%. You've heard a lot about some of the speakers to talk about how EPF is a very good tool, but we are only close to about 34% of the target, 70% of our income, and therefore we need to find other sources of investments. We talked about cash savings. Not all of us save enough in terms of cash because we have a lot of commitments, whether it's through education, whether it's through typical day-to-day kind of savings. But we need to start thinking very carefully what are the alternatives, right, in terms of the multiple sources that we have. And obviously, PRS contribution is one of them. And so this is a very simple, basic tool that I even showed it to my kids last week, right? And that is the power of basic investments. The power of basic investments, now rule number one is to start early. Like I said, I only started when I turned 40. And this is a very classic example which illustrates to you that if you had saved at the age of 40, 10,000 ringgit, and assuming you get 8% return, you will get at the end of age of 60, close to about 494,000 ringgit. Is that sufficient? It depends on your lifestyle. Maybe it's not, maybe it is. But assuming you started at the age of 25, right? Much, much earlier after you graduate and so forth, and you put in only 6,000 ringgit for the next 20 years. And that's a capital outlay of about 120,000 ringgit. With the assumption that you invest at 8%, and you will get about close to 300% and all that, and you will sit down there for the next 20 years doing nothing, the power of compounded interest will help you grow your assets to close to about $940,000 ringgit, which means the big difference there that you see, 120,000 versus basically very basic about close to 200,000, right? So the power of compounded interest and early investments are very, very powerful, and you need to start very, very early. Now, the typical psychology of investments is somewhat like this. And I get this kind of questions all the time when I do a lot of talks. A lot of customers come out to me. One of my biggest customers today is my mother, right? My mother will tell me that she invests in some of my funds and they lose money. My boss also invests in my funds and she complains sometimes. But the point here is that we sometimes forget about cycles. And when we forget about cycles, we don't dollar cost average. And the important thing here is that we need to ride through the cycle. And we need to start investing for the longer term. More often than not, a lot of investors like ourselves always think about a very short-term cycle, right? We are all kind of emotional about it. And that kind of emotional thing gets into the psychology of how we invest. And so, even though you buy at a high, you need the dollar cost average over time, and therefore, eventually, you will then ride through the cycle, and therefore, you'll be able to make money over the long term. Now, you don't want to make the mistake that a lot of investors who are very, very early investments do this, right? They invest at the top, they forgot about the cycles, they don't diversify, and therefore, they don't make as much returns over the long term. So what are the opportunities that we have within the principal group itself? And I want to discuss a little bit about this over the next couple of minutes to let you understand the whole opportunities that we have within the principal group in Malaysia. So the choices are about both conventional and Islamic. We can personalize the products that we have within you, whether you want to select it within the choices that we have, or we can select it for you. And obviously, whether you want to have a monthly top-out or an annual top-out, the choices are there. And of course, at the end of the day, I'm not standing here to tell you that we are all going to offer you a substandard product. We are an award-winning house. In fact, I would say, I just checked the numbers today, right? Over a 5-year period, 6 out of 10 PRS funds within Principal Group itself is a first quartile fund. Out of these 6 funds, 4 of them are number 1 today in the marketplace, right? So we managed to close to about 740 million ringgit in PRS, and thanks to all of you and your contribution and your future contributions, we want to continue to invest and make sure that we give high returns, sustainable returns for you as a customer. And more importantly, at the end of the day, you've seen a lot of videos, we now belong to a global company. It brings along a lot of combination of local expertise with global expertise. I always tell my investment team that we need to think global and act local. And that's exactly how our value proposition is today, right? And as Principal Financial Group has been a very big proponent of savings as well as pensions over the last 140 years, we have a lot of experience to bring forward to in terms of investment capabilities, investment processes, and so forth, right? So that in itself is a big plus to what we can offer to our members. As I mentioned earlier on, I don't spend so much time, we are a award-winning asset management company, but I think the key point here is that we are now being recognized by a lot of providers out there in terms of our choice for our PRS. Now, as I said earlier on, these are the options. You can either choose do it for yourself, or you can do it for me. Basically, it's in very simple terms, we segregate our funds in 3 risk buckets. If you're very conservative, we have portfolios for you. If you're moderate risk, we have portfolios for you. And if you're more aggressive, we also have growth funds for you. And these are some of the funds that we have on the conventional space. As you can see, the returns, SI stands for since inception. Year to date, obviously, is year to date returns. These are very commendable returns that you get over the longer term. But I think I want to emphasize at the end of the day that there are going to be volatility in markets. You will see some returns not being very consistent in the short term, but over the long term, you're right through it, as you can see through the since inception numbers, right? And as I said early on, our funds are definitely above the industry average. Equity Fund A, as you can see, 8.5%, growth 11.4%, and moderate risk at 9.5% on a year-to-date basis. And you can see this kind of similar trends in Islamic as well. I think these are all quite self-explanatory. You can speak to our investment specialists to talk about a little bit more about this. Now, I want to spend a bit more time talking about the investment climate that we're in, right? There's a lot of confusion out there about where we are in the marketplace. How do we see whether the global landscape that we're talking about, and how do we navigate through this kind of landscape? Now, when you think about PRS, when you think about investments, you got to start thinking about what kind of returns are sustainable over the long term. And this is a very classic chart that we pulled out over the last 3 decades. If you had invested in 1989, I started my fund management career in 1990, by the way, and that's why I chose this number. If I had invested since that day, I started my career, right, as a portfolio manager. In global equities, you'll make an annualized return about 6.58%. This is in dollar terms, by the way. In global bonds itself, you'll make about 5.6%. But assuming you want to have a more moderated risk between a combination of 50-50 between equity and fixed income, you get an average return of about 6%. But if you invested across that time period, you make 6 times to $1 for equities and 4 times to $1 on bonds. That's huge amounts of money over the last 3 decades, right? And I think this trend will continue as long as you think in mind of a long-term investment philosophy. The second key point I want to mention is that people always ask me, you are going to buy into an end of a cycle, there's going to be recession, and so forth. This is a chart over the last lot of years, since 1930, where you see the drawdowns on the right-hand side, which are times where you had a major deflationary cycle or in a recession and so forth, since the 1930 crash to the recent one in 2008 during the global financial crisis, as well as during the Asian financial crisis. I want to talk about more towards the last 2 decades where you see the downturn in 1998 as well as 2008. The downturn in 1998, right, lasted 2 years. Markets were down 44%. I remember that very vividly because I was in the industry at that time. I was a broker. I lost a lot of money, right? At that time, we could invest in stocks directly. And basically, the index KLCI dropped from 1,200 points to 250 intraday, I remember, right? And then, subsequently after that, we had capital controls, and you see that 5 years later, the market was up by close to 100%. In the last 10 years, we had the global financial crisis. It was a very severe downturn in global markets as well. That lasted only 1.3 years. It was down by close to 50% on global equities, and the last decade has seen one of the biggest bull markets in history, up close to 350%, right? And both fixed income and equities. So meaning to say, despite the fact that maybe there could be one day when markets do turn, right? We can't predict the future, but if there will be one, we think that it will be shallow. We think that if you buy during the dips, you can make a lot of money as well, right? And so therefore, the power of investing during downturns is very, very powerful, and we need to ride through the cycle through the longer term. And of course, people always ask me about what happens to Malaysia today, right? But then again, if you think about it, over the last 2 decades, we have about close to a return about 300% since 1999, and on ASEAN markets about 146%. Of course, we are going through a midterm kind of downdraft that we're seeing in Malaysia. Malaysia is one of the biggest underperforming markets in the region, but I'm hopeful that history will repeat itself. Not a lot of people know this, right? In the last 2 decades, you've never had more than 3-year declines in the Malaysian equity. We are now about to enter 2020, right? And therefore, we are the 2nd year of declines in the Malaysian market, And I'm hopeful that next year will be a year where Malaysia will shine. Malaysia boleh. But then again, when you invest, we talked a lot about investments. I want to talk a little bit also about risk, right? And to be fair, there are a lot of risk issues in the global market space today. What is the clear and present risk that we should be aware of? These are some of them. You get that on your Twitter, you get that on Bloomberg, and we call this risk velocity. The amount of information flow that goes into markets today is incredible. I've never seen it in the longest time. And therefore, it causes lots and lots of volatility. So, US-China trade war. Yesterday, right, we all knew what happened. Basically, Chile decided that they're not going to have the APEC meeting. Suddenly, there was a short-term volatility intraday. Guess what happened? What the markets did at the end of the day? Markets were up. Why? They decided to focus on the better news. What was the better news? The Fed decided to cut rates, and they're going to continue to cut rates as long as it is data dependent. That's positive. Then you talk about Brexit. 2 months ago, everybody thought Brexit was going to be the end for UK. Guess what? Boris Johnson decided to say that, I'm going to deal with UK. I'm going to go, and he managed to engineer a election by December. That was unprecedented, to be honest, and that causes volatility. But then again, look at the UK economy. Yes, it's down a little bit, but I think we're hopeful that UK will ride through and so forth, right? You got Hong Kong's SAR unrest, Gulf tensions, all that. We live in a world, what I'm trying to say here, we live in a world where geopolitics is a norm today. We are so used to it. I'm so used to it, right? If I don't see geopolitics today, I don't see a market today, because that's where it is. But the interesting part of it is geopolitics causes volatility and a mismatch in asset prices, which as asset managers like ourselves, we can actually take advantage of. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on geopolitics, but I want to put it out there. Principal as a house does not believe there is going to be a 2020 global recession. All right? We said this in our recent Asia Investor Summit. Todd Jablonski, who is our global head of asset allocation out of our PPS team, was in our Investor Summit a couple of weeks ago. And basically, and I agree with him, that I think there should not be a recession next year. The probability is rising, no doubt. Things are slowing down globally, no doubt. But there are opportunities out there that we should need to take advantage of, which we talked about earlier on, either in equities or fixed income. So what do we do now? We've heard a lot about early investments. We've heard a lot about basically trying to save more money for our future. And therefore, I want to talk about what to do next. I think the key as well is that often or not, we always like to put all our money in one basket. Our view is that you need to diversify that basket into multiple buckets, right? And therefore to diversify the risk. So the analogy that I gave you just now with the cycles that we had, more often than not, we plunk it into one fund or one investment, and we hope that this investment is going to make us a lot of money. My view is that we need to manage that risk because volatility is here to stay. And therefore, you need to diversify your risk. And our world is, we look at it this way, right? We have the conservative to the moderate to growth in investments. So if you are like me and are moderately risky, right? I will put most of my money in a moderate sense to slightly more moderately aggressive. But not everybody is like me. So your goals and my goals are going to be different. So we need to stay diversified in this marketplace to make sure that we ensure that we withstand the kind of volatilities that I talked about earlier on. And this is how we plan for our portfolios, for yourselves, through either a very conservative portfolio, to a moderate risk, as well as an aggressive risk, right? And please speak to your financial consultants about this because we publish a monthly investment pointers on this, and we're happy to share that with you on a monthly basis. So in conclusion, when you want to think about investments, think about these 5 things that you have to remember today. Plan. Plan and invest very early, right? Understand your risk tolerance. There is no better time to understand risk than in this marketplace today, because although I tell you that we can be very, very good portfolio managers, I cannot control global geopolitical risk, right? Diversify your investments, very, very important. Review your investments annually, very, very important. So what I do for my personal investments every single year, at the end of the year, when I have a bit more time, is to review those investments to make sure that I'm asset allocating correctly. If there are opportunities out there, maybe I'll put more money. Recently, I started to put more money into the PRS to get more tax advances, and also through EPF MIS. And so I stick to that plan, and I make sure that I know what I'm doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patrick Chung. However, we would like you to please remain on stage as we have a question and answer session. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is the same process. Log on to your Slido app, put your questions in, and Patrick will gladly answer these questions for you.
No?
Yes. So we'll just wait a couple seconds and we'll see these questions popping up over on our LED screen. So I suppose, Patrick, we can say that diversifying or diversity is the word of the day, as it helps to manage the risk and allow us to thread the ever-changing market carefully.
No questions. Wow. Must be really loud and clear.
They're putting their thoughts into process at the moment. All right. My retirement portfolio is exclusively 100% equity. If the fund is performing well, is it wise to stay the course?
It depends on your risk profile, right? So I'm assuming if you put 100% in equities means you must be probably very aggressive or mildly aggressive, right? So if you take the long-term view and you're still young like me, yeah, stay the course.
All right, we shall move on to our next question.
But I have to say this, right, that there are also opportunities on the fixed income space. So if you want more income, maybe you want to diversify into balanced funds, and maybe even help my colleague Jesse there, who is somewhere around, to invest into a more conservative portfolio.
And the next question up there is, do you agree with the rule of thumb that retirement needs equal to annual expense times 25 of that? And this assumes that 40% annual returns and 3% is withdrawal.
Okay. Interesting question. My rule of thumb is that I assume an average returns of, let's say, 4.5%. and an average withdrawal of about 5%. And therefore, you can work it backwards that way. But I think at the end of the day, it all depends on your lifestyle and what you need to plan for. At the same time, I think you also need to think about the inflationary cost of the deflationary cost of returns. I think what is not being priced in by a lot of savers today is the fact that returns in asset prices going forward may not be as high as we had over the last decade, simply because yields are going down. So if you have a bond portfolio, even though the bond portfolio will do well, the income that you get out of it may not be as strong as before. That's point number one. Asset returns have had a phenomenal run over the last decade, and I think that's the reason why I'm propagating the idea that you should start thinking about diversifying into a more balanced approach with a mild aggressive connotation depending on how your horizon is, so that you get both income as well as growth. Right.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And we now proceed with the next question. People nowadays talk about investing in gold. What are your thoughts?
My perception of gold is that it is not really a very good store of value. It's something that you want to think about if you think about something that could go wrong in the FX market one day, right? Which I don't think that was going to happen. Which means that if you have to barter trade one day, then you use gold, right? And so maybe you want to put in maybe about 5% into your investments, but it doesn't pay you any yield at all over the long term. So to me, not something which I prefer, but if you're very risk averse, you want to put into that, right? And also, it's also a hedge against any form of risk aversion or the dollar.
Thank you, and we proceed to the next question. What are your thoughts about 2020 Asian markets?
We are bullish in the short term. We think there's going to be a cyclical recovery this quarter itself. If you look at the technology sector, you look at some of the commodity prices that's been priced in, I think we're starting to see a cyclical recovery. And if our view on the outlook on interest rates is correct, and the Fed has confirmed that as long as the data does not deteriorate, I think that you're going to have a good, continue to get a good rally in equities going forward, at least in the first half of next year. And also, it ties in our view that as long as Donald Trump behaves, we should see markets going up.
Thank you. And the next question, please. How does one with no investment knowledge, experience, know how to diversify? So how does one with no investment knowledge or any form of experience know how to diversify?
It's very simple. Get in touch with principal. We'll try to help you. No, but seriously, we have a lot of investor expertise out here. We can always help you out in terms of your financial planning. I think at the end of the day, it's a very good question, right? Part of the journey about investments is to know your risk and to know your goals. And so when everybody comes up to us all the time, I don't know what your risks are, I don't know what your horizon is, I don't know what your needs are, right? So that kind of conversation needs to be at the very initial onset, and therefore once you establish that, then you can establish what kind of portfolios that we can generate for you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And we now come to the last question, which is on the screen. Apart from equities and bonds, will Principal introduce new investment vehicles in the near future, as in higher risk vehicles?
We are always in the forefront of product development, and therefore we will obviously introduce more products, particularly now that we are part of a global franchise. And so today we're going to launch 2 funds. One is Global REIT and another one is a China Fund. So we are always on the forefront of that. Whether it has to be a risk vehicle, I'm not so sure. But then again, at the end of the day, we will continue to develop products for the customer that fits into the right risk parameters that we look at.
Thank you very much, Patrick, on your insights and sharing your thoughts with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him a big round of applause for his efforts. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Principal spearheaded workplace retirement plans in Malaysia and now has a client network of 320 companies. This is a testament to our commitment to retirement readiness for our partners. Now we are very delighted to have 3 employer partners to share their corporate PRS experience with all of us here today. So as we come to our panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the moderator for the morning, whom is Hairudin Mohammed Noor. So Hairudin Mohammed Noor, let's have you to please slowly make your way towards the stage. And joining Hairudin, ladies and gentlemen, today as our panelist, we have Jun Bay, Human Resource, Starbucks Coffee, Malaysia. We also have Tuan Haji Munawir Abdul Ghani, Vice President of Human Resource, Silchara Malaysia, Sendirian Berhad. We have Eng Chun Jin, Group Executive Director, SL Eng and Associates, and Dale Richard Ward, Chief Technology Officer, ASEAN Principal Asset Management. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite our moderator along with our panelists to please come forward to the stage and take your respective seats. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, as we go about our panel discussion, please kindly put in your questions onto our Slido application so that we are able to answer those questions for you later on after the panelist discussion. So to our moderator, the mic is now yours.
All right. Testing. All right. Thank you so much, Gabriela. And I think to start with, I would like to echo the sentiment of the previous speakers, right? Because they're saying we are not saving enough. And it is true. I mean, like, I'm guilty of that. And I was speaking to Puan Munira earlier. One of the things that she brought up is just like, we are not very disciplined in our savings, which is true as well. And I'm guilty of that. Oh my God. And then when we are not thinking about retirement until we get to the age of like 50, and then we got into this panic mode. It was like, oh, I don't have enough in my bank. How am I going to, like, because I don't have, like, sustainable monthly income at the end of the day. And one of the solutions would be PRS, because employees are going to help you being disciplined in having savings monthly so that you can enjoy your retirement happily, healthily, and you can have all your dreams that you wanted to do at the end of the day. So to start with, I think we have a very good lineup of speakers, and I'll get them to introduce themselves before we hit on with all the questions. And we're going to take questions at the end of the session, so don't forget to post all your questions on Slido, because we're going to take questions at the end of the day. 30 seconds for each speaker. Introduce yourself.
Hi. As you all know, my name is Eng Chun Jin. I'm the Group Executive Director of SL Eng Group. So basically, our firm provides audit and assurance services, tax services, and insolvency. So basically, I'm here partly because I'm also one of the pioneers of the employers who actually sign up with PRS with CIMB back then, and then now we are still encouraging our employees to so-called participate in this PRS. Okay.
Hi, morning everyone. My name is June. I'm the Director of Partner Resources and Compliance for Starbucks Malaysia. I'm very happy today to see most of the tables are filled with our Starbucks drink. Thanks for the support.
Thank you, Starbucks.
That's my drink.
I'm with the company for close to 15 years. I head the human resources, learning and development, and the compliance side of the business. So today I'm very glad to be invited to be part of this principal conference. Reason being, we are also one of the pioneers to be into this salary deduction, and also encouraging our staff to actually embarking into the retirement plan earlier. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dale Ward. I'm with Principal Asset Management, located here in Kuala Lumpur. But I've been with Principal Financial Group for over 21 years and just relocated here last year to join and work with the firm on the technology side. So I'm the Chief Technology Officer, and I lead our technology strategy and delivery for Malaysia and Thailand and Indonesia and Singapore. My role here is really as someone who has been a participant in a voluntary pension savings plan. As an employee in the US, I've been active in our savings plan for 21 years or more, and so that's part of the reason that I've had the chance to come and share some of my experiences this morning.
Thank you, dear.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. My name is Munawir Abdul Ghani. I'm the Senior Vice President for Silchara Malaysia Sdn Bhd. Silchara Malaysia Sdn Bhd is an electronic wafer fabrications. We are located in Kulim, Kedah. So it's the northern part of Malaysia. I don't know how many of you have been in Kulim. I know Puan has been there. And we had a unique business proposition for our employees, our talent, in which we wanted to also take care of them while they are working for us and contributing to us. At the same time, also we wanted to make sure that we take care of them while they are on their retirement phase. So we hope to share some of those things that we have done with our employees, with the audience during this session. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I think this is going to be a very interesting session because they are going to share real-life proven experiences of how PRS have worked for them, right? Okay, let's get down to this. Let's start with CJ, right, if I may. Being a tax expert for nearly like 15 years, right? How would you rate corporate PRS as a tax saving platform being like one of the benefits of it? And let's start with like, what's the structure of PRS in SL Ng and Associate?
Okay, basically in Malaysia, I think many employers do not really know that in your company tax, you can actually contribute 19% to approved pension fund. So EPF is one of the approved pension fund back then. Then over the years, PRS has evolved, and now PRS is also considered an approved fund. So obviously the mandatory contribution governed by law is 12 to 13% to the EPF contributed by the employer. That is, it depends on your salary. So the difference between 19% and 12 to 13% is where the employee can actually do a package with the employer, okay, whereby the employer contribute the difference of maybe 6 to 7%, okay, and the employer will get a tax deduction on that the difference there, and the employee will not be need to pay income tax on that portion. So instead of taking gross salary on that 6%, he or she should take more contribution to this PRS scheme, and that 6 to 7% employee will not get taxed, and employer will have a tax deduction on that. So with that in mind, so basically I also have encouraged our people in the organization to also do that kind of tax reduction. All right. So basically, we have a very comprehensive way of how we would reward our people in the PRS scheme, because we not only so-called empower our people to do their own salary deduction into the corporate PRS, okay, but also we also do more. I think the more one will come in the, I will share with you all later after this.
All right, okay. So I guess like from that point of view, the structure that you're doing, is it auto-enrollment for your staff?
Basically, what we do is we will invite, now we call a principal to our firm on a yearly basis or a bi-yearly basis.
All right.
Because it's better for our people to hear someone presenting outside from the firm. It's easier for them to understand the benefits of, most important is start early, because our people comprise of people who are aged 23 to my age. So a lot of my people, all right, starts as young as 23. I got even people at age of 22. So those are the people that we want them to start. Like I think the morning we have many speakers who say start early. So it's better to have the representative from principal to explain that rather than from me. Because if not, the people will feel that, wow, boss is forcing us to have this tax, so-called salary reduction.
Right, yeah. And in the words of Patrick Chang earlier, right, like call principal. They are the expert in the business and they can help you with the PRS scheme. And moving on, I think I want to ask June, right? So being an early adopter of workplace retirement plan, right, especially with principal, how has that benefited staff retention in Starbucks?
Okay, maybe I give some background about Starbucks, our employees. We call ourselves partners. In Starbucks, currently we have 300 outlets nationwide, workforce close to 4,500. So I would say most of the barista that serve you every day, they are very early age, like 20 years old. So our target audience for this kind of retirement conversations, it's more focused on those retail management. Those are our assistant store manager and manager that about their age of mid-20s to the early 30s. So they are the ones that actually starting their new families, and we encourage them by providing a platform, inviting principals to come to our conference to speak to all our store managers, and educating them. Early retirement plan is important, and also providing a platform for them to do automation of this salary deduction every month. So make them as a habit or discipline them to deduct small portion that they still feel that is affordable, and also explaining to them the compounding interest that they are getting in, and also not forgetting the tax savings. So these are the benefits that we actually explain to our staff. So by doing so, we're actually making a differentiation as an employer. Working in Starbucks is not, I would say, not an easy job because our customer demand a lot from our baristas. So we do encounter a lot of turnover. Our retention rate is actually is also very challenging. So by doing differentiation on innovating ways of HR practices like this kind of PRS deduction, is making ourselves a differentiation, where else our employee will see that we are a caring employer. And with that, we'll be able to take care of our employee, and that they will actually work with us. So because we believe that when an employee is happy, our customers are happy too. So this is a small way of us being HR that put in the initiative to support our employees.
Interesting, and I think that would be quite a similar plan as well for Silterra, if I may, Tuan Haji Munawir, right? Being in Kulim, so far away, and then one of the, I think, factors for, to get people to move to Kulim and working, because it's so far away from everything, right? I think this would be one of the carrots that you would tangle around. Just like, oh, let's move to Kulim and join us. And part being like, Silterra is a good company to work with. So in that sense, right, like what's your view in terms of the challenges of getting workforce, and has workplace retirement plan, for instance, like PRS, help with that as well?
Right. I think talent definitely is a challenge for everybody, especially us. We are an electronics manufacturing company. The nature of the industry is very fast-paced. If you look at the technological innovation that you have, you see the phone. Today the feature. 6 months down the road, the feature has been upgraded. So the window is very, very small, and therefore also the fast pace of life in this industry. And getting the talent into this kind of industries, it requires a different breed of people. And for us as employer, we wanted to make sure that while they are contributing for us during their working years, that they also took care of their retirement, right? Because quite often in the fast-paced life, you forget about that, right? And that is the value proposition that we have for the talent which is coming to Silterra, is that we're going to make sure that they reach their full potential, with good benefits while working at Silterra. At the same time, we will also make sure that they will have something for them, and after their retirement, right? So that is what we are preaching, for the talent that is coming to Silterra. Right?
Interesting. I think that's a way of looking at internal CSR, because we always think about how we can help external community, external society from a corporate point of view, but more often than not, sometimes we forget to take care and look after our own people. So yeah, good job.
Yep.
Yeah, for Silterra. And I think I want to move on to Dale, right? Being like what is it, 21 years, benefiting from PRS and the system, and I think 401k, the scheme is one of a successful one, globally. So how have you benefited, and what can we learn, from in this part of the world, Dale?
Yeah, I think the biggest benefit that I would say I've had from being able to participate in an employer-sponsored voluntary plan is to build discipline. For 21 years now, I've been putting money in out of my paycheck. I never see it, so you learn to live your lifestyle kind of on what's left over. And as a result of that, being able to kind of look back now, that's discipline I probably wouldn't have been able to have myself, and I really appreciate the plan to give me that opportunity to have that. So, and the other thing I would say is that what it gives you is a sense of hope and confidence. We've had really good discussion this morning about some of the statistics and good information from the doctor on the medical challenges ahead, and it's nice to have that sense of, okay, at least I'm doing what I can to be proactive about helping save for that retirement and helping have the kind of lifestyle that I want to have. And so it's been a sense of discipline and confidence, I think, that's had for me.
Okay, so I think we've heard from Starbucks and Silterra how PRS have helped to retain staff and ensure that staff are happy. And then Dale have said as well this PRS system sort of help him discipline himself to sort of have savings for retirement. CJ, I want to move into you now, right? For SLNN, how do you see PRS help retain staff and ensure that your people are happy?
Okay. Basically, what we have in our firm is we reward staff in the sense that we match. For example, if let's say staff who works more than 2 years, for example, the bonus, let's say, we will give staff the option. If you choose to let the employer contribute in addition to your mandatory contribution to the EPF, then part of your bonus would be matched by the employer. For example, if let's say you are eligible to be matched 30%, so part of your bonus, you take 30% of your bonus, goes to your PRS, and the employer will also match that 30% that you are going to put inside to the PRS. And on top of that, we will also contribute a certain percentage in addition to what is being contributed mandatory to EPF. So basically what we have is a more comprehensive idea of how we can actually retain the staff. Okay, because we are actually giving them more bonus, but it cannot be seen. All right, and what Dale have mentioned is always good to have money that you keep somewhere and you can't really see, can't really touch. You can see, but you can't touch. All right, so because of this comprehensive PRS incentive, we can see that we are able to retain certain category of staff. Okay, and this is also a very good incentive for the millennials, because it's very different compared to other firms. Because I don't think there are many firms up there who is willing to match the bonus, okay, and also the employees themselves, because we want the employees to be committed also. So if they commit 30%, we would also match that 30%. So both sides will have the so-called commitment. So with the commitment of both sides, all right, the retention rate has improved, okay, and also the competency of staff is there because they are more into the job, right? Because they know that by working certain number of years, the incentives actually grow, you see. So if let's say you work for our firm for more than 6 years, we are actually matching 80%. So instead of, let's say you put in 30%, we'll match the 30% plus another 80%. So you actually get more, all right? So that is something that we have developed, okay? And I find that very useful, and it is also because we are a SME firm. We don't have deep resources. We do not have the big brands or what, you know. But we are a firm that we know that we need to care for the staff, right? And we know that SMEs are the drivers of the economy, okay? Because SMEs are the one that employ the most staff. I mean, the total SMEs in the market.
Yeah. So I think common themes that I can hear now would be one, commitment, and then two, like what Dale said, was like a discipline, right? And yeah, moving on from SMEs to like, you know, much bigger company like say Silterra, Tuan Haji. What would you say the most common reason for labor turnover, right? Because we're talking about retention. So now let's look at the other side of the spectrum, right? Like turnover. What would be the most common one? And do you see like, you know, PRS being like, you know, one of the ways to help with, to reduce attrition rate for Silterra?
Sure. I think turnover is to one extent is inevitable, right? You look at turnover in many spectrum actually, you know, who are the people that's leaving? That's the thing, you know. If you are losing a lot of your high performance talent, then that's no good. But if you are losing some of your average talent and you can replace them with good talent, then that is something which is very good for the company. But I would say, all in all, a good PRS scheme with certain incentive which is paid to PRS rather than a direct cash is something that can retain the employee. You know, for Silterra, what we did is that we realized this a couple of things during our engagement session with the employees. We did one, you know, in 2013, and there are two factors which is very glaring that we see. For employees, which is, for our talent, which is, you know, 40 years and above, we found out that a large proportion of them basically does not have an insurance scheme. They don't have an insurance, you know, because all of them basically rely on the company insurance, right? And they thought they're going to work forever, yeah, but that's not the case. And secondly, they rely only on their EPF as a saving, right? So on the first one, the insurance, we are able to work out with our master policy, the corporate insurance, and we got them on the portable scheme, which they can take out and bring them, you know, after their retirement. So that's one. And in 2014, we start working with CIMB principal at that point of time to work out on automatic enrollment, you know, for all employees. So the new employees which come into Silterra, you know, they are on automatic enrollment. And basically, the company is putting some seed cash for them initially for that automatic enrollment. So I think that is, you know, a combination of reward which is put on the PRS is something which is able to retain talent in the long run, right?
All right. And from, you know, much matured sort of like, you know, workforce, I would say, like, you know, in Silterra, moving on to a more Gen Y-based workforce in Starbucks, right? Are they like much more difficult group to attract? Because I've been hearing a lot of like complaints about like Gen Ys and the millennials, they jump ship like very so often, and then it's really hard to retain them. It's really hard to please them, right? Like, yeah. What's your experience like for Starbucks?
I think coming back to Starbucks, we do experience hiring and also retention challenges every day. Just to give you numbers, I need to hire like at least 10 partners or 10 baristas every day. Now, every day.
Every day?
Yes. With the amount of new outlets that I'm opening and the amount of turnover that we are facing, this is crazy, right? So, like again, I don't have the magic wand that says that it's fixed or PRS can fix everything. Realistically, we are dealing with all this kind of workforce. So, like again, Starbucks is a place where we actually emphasize on culture. Our culture is inclusive, transparency, and we promote accountability. So, for instance, outlets that managing, let's say KL Central, right? So the outlet manager, perhaps they are only like at their 30 years old, managing maybe 500,000 outlet sales yearly, monthly. So what do we expect from our partners like this? So I think as a company, we empower them, we give them a lot of tools, resources, trainings, and a lot of empowerment that they make decisions every single day that serve our customer. So back in our support center, in our HR department, we also come up with a lot of, I would say, policy that make our staff feel inclusive. I mean, diversity is something that is quite common in our company. We hire senior citizens that doing sliding in a cafe, and we also engage, I'm sure most of you all know that we have a signing store in Bangsa Village, that we hire this deaf employee that serve our customer. So these are the culture that we actually enriching our partners' daily life, that they feel that it's a purpose coming to work. So like I said, there is no, I mean, every company also facing employee leave because of better offer, or I think most of the reason is because they leave the company because they don't like their boss, right? So to be realistic, but again, being employer, we can do is to provide a healthy working environment, an inclusive and diverse culture that actually brings up the best of the employee.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. I think I want to move back to Dale, right? Because it's quite interesting to see like how he has, benefited and enjoyed this 21 years of and PRS benefits. And then I suppose you would have, witnessed a whole cycles of workplace retirement plans. Do you think we will be able to do it in Malaysia? Do you think we have the infrastructure? Do you think we have the support from the agencies and whatnot?
Yeah, I think first of all, we love living in Malaysia. We love Malaysia. It's a great country, and Kuala Lumpur is fantastic. So, but the there you go. Yeah, hands
I
up.
would say we love you too, Dale.
Yeah. But yeah, I do see the building blocks are there, and it's exciting being here at this conference, because it does seem to me like the environment is poised. The right kind of vehicles are in place now with PRS and that opportunity, and I think the right kind of investment choices are emerging and the capabilities. And so I think it's a chance for us to make sure we get the education and awareness out there, and I think to the point that my colleagues have made, we need to help people understand the value of these benefits and these opportunities. But I do believe as though it seems as though this is a market that's poised to grow, and there's certainly a need for our solutions, and there seems like there's a real ability and capability for us to share those solutions now. So.
All right, so I just want to remind everyone again, please put in your question in Slido. I'm going for last round of questions with all the speakers. Okay, so I'm giving you opportunity to ask the speakers question at the end of it. All right, so last round of questions. Let's start with Tuan Haji Menawi, right? Do you think it's expensive to retain staff?
No, I mean, well, that's relative, right? I mean, we have top talent which earns a lot of money, right? So yes, you do need a certain amount of, because it's a market which is very competitive, right? And for wafer fabrication, the facilities only exist in the developed country, where normally the currencies is much higher than Malaysia is, right? But having said that, you know, retention is not always about money, right? Retention is about, you know, a good working place, a good culture that is embodied in the industry, in the company itself, you know, your working colleagues, your supervisors, and so on and so forth. So I think that is something which we try to build in Silterra, right? And well, it goes beyond money, right? And for PRS, I think, you know, it's not always about money. It's about how do we enable the employees to get into the PRS scheme, right? And how do we educate them so that they can start up at that scheme much earlier in their work life, right? For us, you know, every employee will step into Silterra during the orientation. We will brief them of the PRS, right? The benefits and so on and so forth. And at the same time, we are giving them the seed money. So, you know, most of them will take it, right? So that is the first step, right? The second step is, of course, to get them into the salary deduction plan. You know, if they wanted to go into that scheme, then, you know, half of the battle is won. Because normally, you know, they will forget about it, and, you know, the chances that they will never, that scheme will go on until they retire, right? So that is a challenge for us, right? And we are executing that with the help of the team, and I think we hope to do more of this for our employees so that they can retire in a dignified manner and they can enjoy their retirement.
All right, thank you, Tuan Haji. CJ, question, right? Like, so how do you compete with the bigger firms for workforce loyalty efforts?
Basically, I would say that everyone has their own market demand and supply. So there's no, it will be extremely challenging and difficult if we were to compare with ourselves with the big four, because we are nowhere near them. Right? So it's very difficult to compare. So because of that, we do not compare, we do not stress ourselves out. But as we all know, the accounting graduate is one of the largest graduate that is being churned out every year. The numbers are the largest. So because of that, the marketplace will adjust by itself. So basically, I do not really see that the big challenge, I mean, to actually compete with the big firm. But obviously, I'm also very glad that a lot of the people coming to interview at my firm is actually being accepted by the big firm. All right, so if they reject me, it's because they go to the big firm, which I feel that is very good. Okay, but if they accept me and they reject the big firm, all right, that is also because of the so-called the potential reward scheme, okay, that we have offered to them, which includes the so-called comprehensive PRS incentive, and also the opportunity to work in an SME firm. I mean, there is a lot of difference working in the big firm and the SME firm. I myself was from the big firm. All right, so I know how is it like to work in the big firm. So there is a difference between working there and working in the SME firm. So I always believe, I'm the advocate that there is always demand and supply for anything. All right. So, but to so-called attract the right talent to join us, we are actually competing with other SME firms. And there must be a reason why I'm sitting here, because there's not many SME firms actually have this type of PRS incentive, okay? Because a lot of SME firms are driven by dollar and cents. They only just want to survive. They want to minimize tax. That is for them the dollar and cents. But for us, we know that retention of staff is a very expensive thing. Okay, we do not wish to see hiring of my people one every day like what the Starbucks is doing. Okay, so I cannot have that. All right, so we will try to retain the staff as much as possible. But obviously, if they go because of what Tuan Haji has just mentioned, that there are a lot of competitors out there. Okay, so most important thing is we come out with a comprehensive PRS incentive. We provide the SME working like environment, and most important is we have the goals where we want to be. Right. SME firms has potential to grow. Okay, so there is a lot of room to grow. I mean, we can see growth of 30-40% per year. Okay, so that is the type of opportunity that we have as an SME.
Right. Cool. And next question, last question for June, before we move to Dale. What advice would you give for companies who have not participated in workplace retirement plans yet?
I think getting into it is not difficult. What you need to do is actually get someone like PRS, their staff, to actually come to your company and give the talk to your staff. Now, of course, get it done through the bosses first. When the boss believe in it, and then I think it's easy for us to execute it. And again, it is no cost to the company. It's just providing a platform to deduct from the salary. And of course, you can do more by doing like automation, like every new partner, any new staff that's joined in, just straight away deduct from the salary. And of course, doing the tax that is on the tax savings. I think it's not too complicated on introducing this to the employees.
All right.
Yeah.
Last question to Dale before we take questions from the floor. Right. In your most honest observation, right, to compare Malaysians with, say, Americans in terms of our behavior in investing, what would you say the differences are?
I would say that's a good question. I would say in talking to my staff and some of my coworkers, I'm a bit surprised by some of the young people are pretty conservative with their investment choices in Malaysia. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to kind of really grow that education and awareness, and some of that discussion around diversification that Patrick talked about, so that people can have just a little more information to act on and make the right choices in their investment. I think in the United States, perhaps there's just more of that information is in front of us more frequently. And so I'd say that's a difference I see. I think there's a desire to learn more and a desire to have more information.
All right. So shall we, look at questions that you have posted on Slido, if we may. So don't forget to, log on to your Slido, key in the passcode, and then, your questions. Right. Do we have the first question from our, yes, there you go. Never mind, it's okay. I'll read out the questions, okay? Can you rank in terms of importance the following employee benefits in your organization? Healthcare, retirement plan, and salary. Okay, let's do a rapid fire for the three companies here. How do you rank healthcare, retirement plan, and salary, CJ?
Salary is number one.
Salary. All right, I'm taking note of what to say to my boss later.
Yeah.
Okay, salary.
And second, I think, will be retirement plan.
Retirement plan, and then
third
healthcare.
is healthcare. Yeah.
All right, June?
I'm a HR person. I don't see salary as part of the benefits.
All right, okay.
Okay, so it's totally not in the questions.
Mhm.
So for me, I would say healthcare and followed by retirement.
Healthcare and then retirement plan. Tuan Haji?
Well, you got to look at the total remunerations, right? If
Mhm.
you're talking about salary, because everything actually falls under the umbrella of total remuneration. But if you to ask me, at different age, you will value things differently. I think probably people who are maybe at 40, something like that, they will think about retirement more. The younger guys, they want to see the salary so that they could spend at the end of the month. And, healthcare, but for me, it's retirement.
Retirement. It's interesting how when, Tuan Haji was saying that salary young people want to spend, and he looked at me. All right, Dale.
I'd love to add a fourth if I could.
What would the fourth be?
The fourth to me would be the chance to do interesting and challenging work. And so certainly with the technology people that I work with, the young people, they want to make a difference and they want to do interesting work where they can learn and grow.
Mhm.
So I think that's number one. But then I would say salary, retirement, and healthcare.
All right, good. Second question, if we have second question from the floor. Come on, guys, don't be shy. All right, there you go. As HR practitioner, do you think workplace retirement plan will give you advantages when it comes to your competitors who don't have such scheme in place? All right, let's start with, I think CJ started first. Let's have Tuan Haji. As HR, do you think workplace retirement plan will give you advantages when it comes to your competitors who don't have such scheme in place? Yeah, Tuan Haji Munawar.
Yes, definitely. All right. I think, as the people become aware of the retirement and the need to have enough money for retirement, I think any workplace retirement plan will add a differentiator when you wanted to hire talent.
Mhm.
Definitely.
All right,
Yes.
Dale, your professional view on this?
Yeah, as an employee, I would say, yeah, absolutely. I much rather work for a company that's interested in helping me live my best financial life. So to me, it's a definite advantage.
Jin?
I also totally agree with
Totally
that.
agree.
Yeah.
Okay, CJ?
Yeah, agree.
Agree. All right. Shall we take two more questions? Can I have another question? Two more questions. All right, there you go. As a HR, how would you sell the kind of initiatives such as PRS to the MDs to get buy-in? I think this is a good question. All right, CJ, what do you think?
Basically, I am the so-called group executive director. So basically, like what June has mentioned, I was the one who set the tone.
Mhm.
So that my entire differential of 6% actually went to PRS.
Mhm.
Okay, so because I'm a young guy, so we appreciate the value of early compounding. So I don't think it's difficult to explain to me.
Mhm.
But if you were to explain it to another senior partner, that will be challenging.
Mhm.
Because like what we see on the compounding side, if you're already at 50 plus, it's not easy to convince that person to go into the PRS scheme.
All right.
Because it really depends at what age or what lifestyle.
Mhm.
So even though I can say that it's a very good incentive, but obviously if that person has already been contributing for the past I don't know how many years, and then now suddenly with this new scheme, yes, the tax incentive given is great, but it's only limit to 3,000 ringgit. So it's not much there.
Yeah.
So it's quite challenging if you really want to sell this PRS to the
Older guys.
to the top.
Mhm. All right, June, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's more on the benefits that we need to get it through.
Mhm.
What is the benefits as a corporations, and of course, win-win is employee also get the benefit of it. So for my case, I don't have any difficulty to getting through from my boss. So I think that's how we started with this many
All
years
right.
ago.
Okay, Dale?
I think senior leaders always want a good business case. And so to me, it just makes good business sense. As June has said, I think you can show the value in terms of retention and keeping the highest quality employees. It makes a business sense. Turnover is expensive, and it's just a solid business case, I think, to sell the benefits of PRS.
Tuan Haji Munawir?
Well, I agree with Dale. I think if you can show the benefits in terms of retention of talent, then it's something which is very sellable to the MDs and so on and so forth. But having said that, you know, we must also look at it. The kind of initiative such as PRS, sometimes it's not going to cost much. For example, a salary deduction through payroll on a monthly basis is something which we have done for Tabung Haji and
EPF.
whatnot and so on and so forth, right? So that is already there. So we just only need to get the employee to get into the system and start saving. Yeah?
That's true. Okay, maybe one last question. Do we have one last question? All right. Okay, specifically for June. Starbucks, as most baristas are young, how do you convince them to save for retirement versus instant gratification?
Yeah,
Which is yes, there you go.
This is a very difficult question. Yeah, frankly speaking, the youngsters don't like to do saving now, right? So they rather spend on a gym, buy a new handphone, rather than buy insurance or retirement plan. I think don't waste time. But anyway, of course, we still give the education. The choice is on them, right? I can't force them. And then I think it's a lot of effort to make them think and think about their future. So I think, again, back to the youngsters now, their priority are very different. So I think for us, like I said, we target the right target audience. Those at their early 30s, that starting their families, and perhaps they have the family, those that their parents to take care, they know the cost of the medical. These are the partners that they will believe in retirement early. I mean, planning on early retirement is it's important.
All right, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for our speakers. All right, I think like the theme would be very simple: early education, save, 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 and be disciplined in your saving. And if in any case, any doubt, call Puan Munira. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to our panelists, we would like you to please kindly remain on stage. To our moderator, Hairud, and ladies and gentlemen, please give him a big round of applause. Thank you very much. You may return to your seats. We would like our panelists to please remain on stage, as we would like to thank you with a token of appreciation. And to do the honors, I'd like to invite to the stage once again Juan Izaguirre, CEO, ASEAN Principal Asset Management, Berhad, to please come forward and present a token of appreciation to all of our panelists. So first off, it is to Chun Jin. Ladies and gentlemen, please give him a big round of applause. To Jun Bei of Starbucks Coffee Malaysia. And over to Dale, ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a big round of applause as well. And to Tuan Haji Munawir. And now we would like to invite you to come closer together so that we can have a group photograph. And that, ladies and gentlemen, highlights our panelists for learnings and opportunities with PRS. Thank you very much to our panelists. And thank you very much, Juan, for presenting them with their tokens of appreciation. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now come towards the end of our session for today. And we hope that each and every one of you will be able to walk away with meaningful lessons to be able to start taking charge with PRS and implementing them at your workplace. And before we conclude, just another reminder that we do have Starbucks Coffee Malaysia pop-up booth outside. So if you'd like to grab a coffee, please go on and do so. It is complimentary. We also have our KPJ specialist hospital booth where you can get a free health screening, of which a cholesterol check is at a very small fee of 10 ringgit Malaysia. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have lunch that is waiting for you in the foyer. My name is Gabriella, and it's been a delight keeping you company as your MC. So do enjoy your lunch, enjoy the rest of your day, and take care.